Today I'm cooking dinner inspired by the Mediterranean, featuring whole roasted Branzino, and it is gorgeous. I'm gonna serve that with some slow roasted tomatoes with just a little bit of garlic and olive oil. I'm gonna use the slow cooker, some quickly broiled asparagus, and a Mediterranean style rice salad with dates and almonds. That is Ian's absolute favorite. And to top it off, I'm gonna have a rustic walnut tart, and I'm gonna show you how to make a basic pâte sucrée or a sweet tart dough, because once you learn how to make that, the world's your oyster in terms of sweet tarts. So we're gonna slow down and I'm gonna show you step by step. To get started with the tomatoes, I have 6 gorgeous tomatoes here. So I washed these already. Now I'm simply removing the cores using a paring knife. Not the entire core, just the little core shape that includes the stem and the little hard nubbin underneath it. Now we're gonna cut these in half. Pretty simple in terms of prep. And we're gonna cook the tomato halves, and they'll shrink down and reduce. The skin will get a little shriveled, and the flesh will intensify in its flavor. It is a great way to prep tomatoes. So into a slow cooker insert, I'm just gonna put the tomatoes. I like putting them skin side down, that way they hold their shape a bit better, and then they sit nicely on a serving platter. Half a cup of olive oil, just your extra virgin cooking olive oil. You don't need the fancy salad olive oil. This is the cooking olive oil. Next up, a little salt and pepper. So that's a 1/4 teaspoon pepper and 3/4 teaspoon table salt. Just gonna roll the tomatoes around in the olive oil and that seasoning. Make sure everything's nicely coated. Something just about tomatoes and olive oil. It's the perfect combination. All right, last up, we're gonna add some thyme. Now the recipe actually has you mince thyme and put it in. I've done away with that. I just love throwing the whole sprigs in there. The thyme leaves fall right out as they cook, and it's just easier. And I washed those already. Last but not least, we're gonna add some garlic. 6 cloves of garlic. The only thing I'm gonna do to this garlic is I'm gonna smash them to help release some of the flavor. And to smash garlic cloves, you put it flat on the counter, use the flat side of a knife, and just bang it. Get them down into that oil. That garlic is also part of the treat when you're serving these because it's slow roasted alongside the tomatoes. Into the slow cooker these go. 3 to 4 hours on high, or if you want to stretch it out a little longer because that works better for your timeline, 5 to 6 hours on low. And you know they're done when they're softened and the skins have just begun to wrinkle. All right. Now let's start making the rice for the rice salad. And how you cook the rice for the salad makes all the difference. You can't just make a pilaf and spread it out and expect it to taste good. Because if you think about it, room temperature pilaf always has a little bit of a hard crunch to it. That's not tasty. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna toast the rice, give it a little flavor that way, and then boil it like pasta. So a cup of rice into a skillet. We're gonna toast it over medium heat till the grains start to turn a little bit of color. A few of them get a little golden. It takes about 8 minutes or so. Once the rice is toasted and it's very fragrant, we're gonna add it to salted boiling water and cook it until it's nice and tender. It takes about 8 or 9 minutes. Then we're gonna strain it and spread it out on a rimmed baking sheet and let it cool. This rice is nicely cooled. Time to make salad. So I'm just gonna scrape it right into a serving bowl. And this rice has a very different texture than pilaf because we boiled it like pasta. So it'll have a nice tender texture at room temperature. Now when you chill it, and you can make this salad ahead of time, it will get a little stiff. So you wanna make sure that you bring it back to room temperature before you serve it. To the salad, we're gonna add a whole bunch of fresh ingredients, starting with some scallions. Just gonna trim the edges here, trim the ends. And as I usually do with scallions, I like cutting the white and light green parts in half just because they have a stronger flavor. If you get a big piece of that in your mouth, it's very scalliony. So cutting them into smaller pieces, less likely to happen. I'm just gonna slice them nice and thinly. Right onto the rice it goes. Next up, some fresh parsley. About a 1/4 cup of fresh parsley, nicely chopped. Obviously, I washed this already. Just gonna take any of the thick stems out here. You just want the leaves. It's always a judgment call. How much will make 1/4 cup when it's chopped? I think it usually reduces its volume by about half. So start off with about 1/2 cup of leaves. Yeah, it's about a 1/4 cup chopped. It's looking a little more like 1/3 cup than a 1/4 cup. But I think for a rice salad, that'll be just fine. Into the bowl it goes. Bringing it up top, adding the last few ingredients here. This is why Ian loves it. He loves dates. These are medjool dates, 3/4 cup that have been nicely chopped. And I found out, don't buy the pre-chopped dates. They're all dried up. They have a white filmy color. better off to chop them up yourselves. They're nice and moist. Just want to break up any clumps. Make sure you don't get too much date in your mouth at one time. You really want to work it into the rice. And some almonds, toasted sliced almonds. Again, about 3/4 of a cup. I'm going to set this aside while we make the dressing. Very simple dressing. Here we have 1/4 cup of olive oil. To this, we're going to add a little bit of lemon juice, fresh from a lemon, about 2½ tablespoons or so. That looks pretty good. And we're going to add some orange zest and orange juice, and that orange flavor will be repeated with the Branzino, so it really ties the meal together. About a teaspoon of fresh orange zest. I scrubbed this orange beforehand, and about 2 tablespoons of juice, which is about half an orange. 1, 2, perfect. And last but not least, a little bit of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon. The cinnamon really just brings the almonds and the dates all together, almost adds a sweet quality without adding any sugar. There's plenty of sugar in those dates. All right, gonna whisk this all together. Perfect. Pour this dressing all over. It's not a lot of dressing, it's just enough to give the rice some flavor. And then toss it all together. Ian's gonna be so happy I made this. Whenever I make this and there's any leftovers, if he doesn't eat it for breakfast the next day, it's gone by lunchtime. This is one of his favorite side dishes. All right, that's pretty good. I'm gonna set this aside, clean up, and then we can get started on the Branzino.
Love what you're watching? Take your cooking to the next level with our Essential membership. Get instant access to thousands of recipes, tips, techniques, product reviews, and step-by-step videos. Our Members app allows you to search by ingredient, set dietary preferences, and save your favorite recipes. For those looking to level up, our newest feature, ATK Classes, offers more in-depth instruction led by ATK experts, so you can gain greater confidence in the kitchen. Start your free trial by visiting the App Store or going to americastestkitchen.com/YouTube today.
The rice is done, the tomatoes are cooking away. Time to finish up with the asparagus, and then we can focus on the Branzino. So the asparagus, we're gonna broil at the last minute just with some olive oil, salt, and pepper. My favorite way to cook asparagus. To trim asparagus, what I like to do is line them up, snap one. That kind of gives you the most tender part on this side, and this is the tough woody stems. And I just use that as a guide. There we go. Into compost this goes. And that is it for prepping the asparagus. I washed it already. All right, now let's talk about the Branzino. We're gonna make a flavorful salt to rub on the inside and the outside of the fish while it roasts. Just add some nice flavor. We're gonna use lemon zest and orange zest. We're gonna about 2 teaspoons of each, which is about 1 orange. Next up, the lemon zest. All right, that's good for the lemon zest and orange zest. Now we're gonna add some salt and pepper. So we're gonna add 1.5 teaspoons of table salt and 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. We're just gonna mix this up into a paste. I know I'm using the back side of a spoon. Yes, that is weird, but I kind of do that when I cook. I just grab whatever's nearby that looks like it'll work. And I wanted something this size that would mix things up, but it wouldn't stick to. And that happened to be the back side of a spoon. Perfect. All right, so we'll set this aside till we're ready to bring the fish out of the fridge. Now for the sauce. Again, we're gonna repeat some of these flavors. Here I have some olive oil. We're gonna add about 2½ tablespoons of lemon juice. 1, 2 1/2. 2 tablespoons of orange juice. 1, 2. There we go. Now we're gonna add a minced shallot. Gonna add some fresh parsley. Here I have a little clump of freshly washed parsley. You want about 1/4 cup. Sound familiar? A lot of parsley and lemon and orange juice in this meal, which are the flavors I really love. There we go. I'm gonna save the stems because we're actually gonna put the stems inside the fish as they roast for extra flavor. So I'm gonna set these aside, give this a nice chop. All right, into the sauce it goes. A few pepper flakes, right? A little salt and pepper, just to taste. There you go, that's as simple as it gets for the sauce. And now, time to bring out the star ingredient, the Branzino, which I've been keeping chilled in the fridge this whole time because it's a fresh fish and you wanna keep it that way. Oh, these guys are gorgeous. Look at them. They're about 1.5 pounds each. You can see they're good fish because the eyes are nice and clear. They've been scaled, they've been gutted, and they've been rinsed, and they're ready for the oven. All right, let's get these guys seasoned up. Now, the one piece of trimming that I'd like to do before I roast them is cut these fins off because they have a tendency to burn. So, sharp pair of scissors, the fins on top as well. Be careful, these ones, they'll poke you. And this guy. Let's not forget this fin on this side. All right. Now, I rinsed them off when I got them home from the fish market. And I'm just going to give them a nice pat dry because we're going to spread some of that salt into the cavities and onto the flesh. So we get rid of this paper toweling, put them right on the baking sheet so we can prep them a bit more easily. And to help this flavored salt really work its way into the flesh of the fish, we're going to cut a few slits along each side, about 3 or 4, right from the top of the back of the spine down to the belly, not all the way, but most of the way, right down into the flesh. Just really gives you a bit more surface area to get the flavoring into the fish, right? And you want to do this on both sides. This is good to do no matter if you're roasting it or you're grilling it. And these fish are easy just to throw on the grill because they're a whole fish with the skin on the outside. They have less of a tendency to stick. All right, now I'm getting fishy, so I have everything already prepped. Here's the salt rub we made with the lemon and orange zest. I'm gonna rub a little bit, about a teaspoon or so, on the inside of the cavity. And this really just helps perfume the fish as it roasts. Also gonna stuff the cavities with a few orange slices and those parsley sprigs left over from making the sauce. Again, just adds a little moisture to the roasting process and just perfumes the fish as it cooks. A few parsley sprigs in each, because you have them, why not? Now we're gonna brush the outside with oil. I measured out the oil already. It's about 2 tablespoons of olive oil because I knew my hands were gonna be good and fishy. So both sides. And now I'm gonna take the rest of this spice paste and really rub it evenly all over the outside of the fish, down into the cuts we made. I'm getting excited for this meal already. It feels really celebratory when you have a nice whole fish like this, almost like a special occasion. All right, we're gonna let this fish hang out for 10 minutes, let the salt and the zest work their way into the flesh. I'm gonna get cleaned up and we can roast it. Time to get this fish in the oven. Now I slid a piece of parchment paper under the fish. That just makes cleanup easy. It goes into a ripping hot oven, 500 degrees, until the fish is cooked through, which only takes 15 to 20 minutes. Once the fish is done, it'll register about 140 degrees. We're gonna pull it out and let it rest for 5 minutes. And in the meantime, we're gonna adjust the oven rack to be really close to the broiler, about 4 inches thereabouts, for the asparagus. Before throwing the asparagus under the broiler, toss it with a little olive oil, a little salt and pepper. And depending on how thick the spears of asparagus are, it could take anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. Oh, look at that asparagus. It is gorgeous, that char on the outside. And I love it when the tips get charred like that. Oh, it is my favorite way to eat asparagus. Let it cool off just a little bit because it is piping hot. All right, next up, the tomatoes. They've been cooking this whole time, hands off. Time to get them out of the slow cooker. Oh, it smells like ratatouille if ratatouille was just tomatoes. And these taste glorious alongside the fish and the asparagus. But leftovers, I just eat them straight on toast with eggs, on sandwiches, you name it. And they're very soft. So I'm using a slotted spoon. It's such a hands-off dish and it is so fun to serve for company because everyone's just goes crazy for the flavor of them and it's so easy. All right, time to make a tasting plate. Oh, before we make a tasting plate, let's have some wine. So this is an Italian white wine. It's a Vermentino, which is a grape varietal found throughout Italy, also found in Liguria, which is famous for the Branzino fish. This one was grown in Tuscany, but it has a really lovely flavor profile that's perfect with fish. It's not as heavy as a Chardonnay, but it has that butteriness, and it's not as tart or acidic as, say, a Sauvignon Blanc, but it has that lightness to it. So it's the perfect complement. Now for the fish. I know it's a cool way to present fish. It's certainly an easy way to cook it, but this means you gotta have filet at table side, which isn't hard at all. So the one thing you wanna do, it's about 1 side of fish per person. And what you wanna do is you wanna slice from the top to the bottom, or the bottom to the top, we're gonna make fillets. I like to go about halfway through. You can use one of the slits you already made. Then using a paring knife, you're gonna cut along the back side. All right, so you wanna use 2 spatulas. It's sort of a catch and release scenario. So one spatula, so you're gonna go right where you cut it and just gently run your spatula alongside the bones and just flip it away from the backbone. Now at this point, you've exposed this area and you can go through and see if you have any pin bones. Oh, there's one. Pin bones are inevitable on the plate, so a few's okay. But this is a nice way just to avoid some of the bigger ones that you don't want your guests eating. All right, put this on the platter. Now for the tail side of the fish, make sure it's cut all the way through the belly on this side, all the way to the tail. Again, 2 spatula method. Flip the fillet over and onto the plate. Let's not forget the sauce. And the sauce really does tie this whole platter together because again, it has some of that orange, it has some of the lemon, the olive oil, the parsley. I like to put a little sauce on the tomato just because I can. This is my kind of meal. I'm going right for the fish. I love eating the skin. I just love the flavor of Branzino. Has sort of that sea bassy flavor, but it's tender, it's flaky, and with the zest salt that we put on the fish and that vinaigrette, it is awesome. I know what my husband Ian would go for. He'd go for that rice salad in a heartbeat. It is such a good combination. The sweetness of the dates, and the toastiness of the almonds, the spear of asparagus. Perfectly cooked, nicely charred. Last but not least, a little tomato. Getting some of the tomato with the fish, that's also a good bite. This is pretty much a special occasion meal for me. A fresh whole fish right from the water, roasted with just a few ingredients, that rice salad, the tomatoes, and a little vermentino. This is a good dinner. To follow up this wonderful Mediterranean-inspired meal, we're gonna make a simple walnut tart and serve it with some bourbon whipped cream.
At Cooks Illustrated, we're food nerds. That's why every recipe we develop involves research, cooking science, and rigorous testing by our team of expert test cooks. Only the highest rated recipes earn a place in our award-winning magazine. Every issue features our latest recipes and discoveries, cooking tips, and equipment and ingredient reviews. Our step-by-step photos and hand-drawn illustrations show you exactly how to succeed. So, are you ready to become the best cook you know? Subscribe to Cooks Illustrated magazine at cooksillustrated.com today.
Break down exactly how to make a sweet tart dough or a pâte sucrée, because once you have that in your arsenal, there are endless desserts at your fingertips that you can whip up in a snap. Mix 1 large egg with a teaspoon of vanilla extract together. And in the food processor bowl, we're gonna mix 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 2/3 of a cup of confectioner's sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon salt. Just pulse it together till it's nicely mixed. Then we have 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Now this has been cut into 1/4-inch pieces and chilled. So we're gonna sprinkle this over the top. All right, and then you're gonna put the lid on and let her rip for about 20 seconds until the mixture really has a nice even consistency to it. Almost looks like cornmeal. And then with the processor running, you're gonna add that egg vanilla mixture through the feed tube and let it keep going until a dough comes together around the blade. Now the cool thing about this dough is you get to roll it out while it's still easy to work with, right from the food processor. So between 2 pieces of parchment paper, you want to roll it pretty much to the edges of the parchment, as thin as you can. And then we're going to throw it in the freezer for 30 minutes before fitting it into the tart pan. Here is the tart dough, nice and chilled, really easy now to work with and fit it into our tart pan. So you can see it's pretty hard, which is perfect. If at any time this dough gets too soft, especially on a hot day, don't hesitate to throw it back in the freezer to chill it up again, because nothing worse than a dough melting on you while you're trying to fit it into a tart pan. I'm just loosening the parchment on both sides. We only need 1 piece of parchment now. Now to get this dough into this tart pan, there's a cool way to do it that's pretty foolproof, especially if you're a beginner. What we're gonna do is a 9-inch tart pan with a removable bottom. We're gonna take out the bottom and we're gonna use this as a stencil or like a big old biscuit cutter. And we're gonna press it into the dough. We're gonna cut out a round that'll pretty much fit right into the bottom of the tart pan. All right, now to go up the sides, what we're gonna use is a ruler and a paring knife. Now this ruler is about 1 inch wide and you want strips that are about 1 inch wide. Using the ruler as a stencil, we're just gonna cut strips of tart dough. I find you need about 3 of them. You'll have extra dough here, so don't worry if you need to patch it or if you screw one up, there's plenty of dough to work with. Now, to fit this into the tart pan, I'm gonna put the bottom of the tart pan back in and then lift up this nice big piece that we cut out. We're just gonna drop it into the tart pan. There we go. Like I said, it pretty much will cover the bottom of the pan. What you wanna do is take your fingers and really the flesh of your finger and really press that dough right into the corner. And if it smears up the side of the tart pan, that's fine. You just wanna make sure it's a nice tight corner. Nice and flat on the bottom. Now, using the strips, we're gonna start laying them up the sides of the tart pan. What you wanna do is you wanna sort of nestle the dough into these curves. You don't wanna press it and stretch it out. You just wanna ease the dough into that fluted edge. And on the ends, overlap it ever so slightly. You really won't see any of these seams in the thinnest tart shell. I'm gonna go around one more time, really make sure it's pressed into the fluted edge, and also kind of secure the seam where the sides meets the bottom. All right, that looks perfect. This tart shell now needs to go into the freezer to firm up before we can bake it, and we'll trim it just before it goes in the oven. And these scraps, let me tell you, they are delicious. Don't throw them away. Sprinkle them with a little sugar, maybe a little cinnamon, throw them in an oven, instant cookies. Once the tart shell is chilled, use a paring knife to trim off the extra dough. Spray a large sheet of aluminum foil with veg oil spray and lay it over the dough, really pressing it down into the corners. Then fill with pie weights. Again, make sure those pie weights get into the corners and up the sides because they'll prevent that dough from slumping in the oven. Bake it at 350 degrees for 30 minutes, spinning it around halfway through. Then remove the pie weights and bake it for 10 minutes longer until it's beautiful and golden. Oh, there's nothing like the smell of a perfectly warm tart crust. Now you can see it's perfectly done now that I've taken the pie weights out because it's golden all the way around the edge and throughout the bottom. Now most tart recipes, before you fill it and bake it, are gonna ask that this tart shell be cooled completely, and that takes about 2 hours. However, a baked tart shell held empty will last for a day or 2. And really, it's so easy to make. Once you have this in your arsenal, endless dessert options will be yours for the taking. Time to make the rustic walnut tart, which is a breeze once you have your tart shell already baked and cooled. It's gonna start by making, I like to call it the goo. It's a sweet goo. It starts with just half a cup of packed brown sugar. This is 1/3 of a cup of corn syrup. To this, we're gonna add an egg, just a single large egg, a little vanilla, 2 teaspoons. Yeah, the base of this tart is a lot like a pecan pie with that sort of goo, but there's a lot less of it. It's just a very thin layer that holds the walnuts together. Just a tablespoon of Ian's bourbon and a little bit of salt, half a teaspoon of table salt. Now you wanna whisk this together until all the sugar is pretty much dissolved. All right, that looks pretty good and uniform. All right, whisk that till it's mostly smooth, and we're gonna add some butter. I have 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter that I've melted and cooled in my fancy little yellow butter pot. It's my favorite pot in the whole kitchen because it was a gift. Oh yeah, smells like bourbon and butter, which is not a bad thing. Into the tart shell it goes. And now for the walnuts, which is really cool because you think about a pecan pie, you put the walnuts in the goo and it's all coated. But if you do it this way, some of the walnuts stick out of the tart and it has a lovely look. And it also means that some of the walnuts aren't coated, so they get nice and toasted. Just a nice dual texture. All right, and it's that easy. Into a 375-degree oven, middle rack. It takes about half an hour or so for it to bake through. Oh, this tart is perfectly cooked. You can see it's bubbling, it's souffled a little bit, but the filling is set and the walnuts on top have started to toast. Now you just gotta let it cool completely, and that takes about 2 hours. The tart is completely cooled and it's ready to serve. Now this is a tart with a removable bottom. So what you wanna do is hold your hand up, pull the tart pan bottom off, and then to separate the tart from the pan bottom, you can just slide a knife or an offset spatula. It should really just slide right out. Have some coffee. Ooh, that looks good. And the thing I really like to serve with this rustic walnut tart is some bourbon flavored whipped cream, which is just as easy to make as regular whipped cream. You have some heavy cream, chilled. We're gonna add a little bit of bourbon, a little bit of vanilla, and some confectioner sugar. And I like doing it by hand, especially if you're only doing a small amount. Just whisk it to nice soft peaks. Now for the best part, diving in. Oh, that's a good sound. It means the crust is nice and crisp. If you see my dog coming up, it's because He once stole a piece of this tart and he fell in love with it. Oh, yep. Speaking of, fell in love with the flavors of it. Oh, look at that. You can tell it's just held together, those walnuts, and the crust is nice and brown. A little bit of bourbon whipped cream, a little bit more. Yes, ma'am. Right off the point. They're such simple flavors. The walnuts, it's toasted in the oven, the brown sugar, a little bourbon, and that perfect pâte sucrée with just a little simple whipped cream. It's not a fancy dessert, it's rustic, but the flavors are spot on. See you next time.
If you're ready to take your cooking to the next level, head over to americastestkitchen.com and get a free trial of our ATK Essential membership. While you're there, you can sign up for our free email newsletters and download our app. So, what are you waiting for?